Listen. Say. Ready?
He had been working in sales until last year. I'd never met the president until today. I'd been reading about your work before we met. We had never worked from home before the pandemic. He had been with us for 6 years before he got promoted. I'd never traveled overseas until college. Before joining the company, I had been a researcher. We'd never received so many orders before the campaign. I'd been a fan of that movie until I saw the sequel. I had never been into books until recently. I hadn't seen snow until my trip to Korea. I hadn't really thought about moving until last week. Had you been busy before the project started? He had been rock climbing until his late 30s. We had been using that logo until last year. They'd been excited about the event until it got cancelled. We hadn't had any foreigners work for us until you joined. We had made a decision before our last meeting. The team had been doing badly before they finally won today. How long had you lived in Nara before you moved to Tokyo? She had worked in HR until she got transferred to sales. I'd never had a chance to speak to our CEO until today. He had led our department until his retirement. She'd never led a project until this year. I wish I had known before it was too late. I hadn't been socializing until recently. Things had become pretty bad by the time we found out. I had been working in Dubai before I came to Japan. We had been very close friends until a year ago. I hadn't been feeling good until this morning. I had been studying physics before I joined the firm. We had been using these metrics until last year. I had never thought about it that way until today. I had forgotten about it until you brought it up. We hadn't been so busy before this project started. Had your company expanded abroad before it went public? Many people had inquired us even before the announcement. had been waiting for an hour by the time you arrived. We hadn't been making progress until recently. He'd been my mentor before you came. We had been business partners until 2010. I'd been a loyal customer until that incident. Had you met Sam before the three of us met? We hadn't known each other until a year ago. The company had been growing until the recession. Until recently, we had never outsourced admin work. I had no idea until I saw the announcement. Had you mentored anyone before you joined our team? I'd been working alone until I joined this project team. I had agreed to fill in for her before she took a leave. We hadn't realized until recently. I had never made proposals until I joined sales. We had been traveling frequently until the outbreak. Had your firm had an Indian guy before I joined? Had everyone gone home when the earthquake occurred? I had never played golf until my friends made me. She had been living in Mia until college. I'd been living with my parents until last May. I'd been a freelancer until I joined the company. He had been serving in the military until he was 50. He said he had never felt so grateful before. I hadn't been aware until you told me. I'd been working part-time until my mid-20s. She said she hadn't thought about it yet. I'd been preoccupied until a few days ago. They said they had considered moving their offices. Sorry, I had gone out for lunch when you came. I heard you had worked in a securities company. The factory had been operating until it was closed in 2001. We had had a similar problem before this one. I told him we hadn't started planning yet. Our sales had been low until the second quarter. She said she had started practicing.